I covered my neighbor's rent when her husband left, and she couldn't afford it. When I asked for partial repayment months later, she said, "You gave it. You don't get to ask." Then she reported me for harassment. I filed a claim. What happened at the hearing? This happened last year, but I'm still dealing with the fallout. I live in a small town outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Quiet neighborhood. Most people keep to themselves, but I'd always been friendly with my next-door neighbors, Sarah and Mike. We'd exchange small talk, help each other shovel snow in winter, that sort of thing. Then one day, Mike just left. No warning. I saw him loading his pickup early one morning, and then he was gone. Later that afternoon, Sarah knocked on my door. She was crying, trying to stay composed, but clearly holding back a breakdown. She told me Mike had left her and their 2 kids. No note, no explanation. Just walked out. She said he'd drained the joint account before he left. Rent was due in 4 days and she didn't have it. I didn't even think that hard about it. I offered to cover that month's rent. It was around $1,050. I told her it was no pressure, no rush to pay me back, just something to help her land on her feet. She broke down crying again, hugged me, and said I was saving her and the kids. Over the next few months, I checked in now and then, helped fix a leaking faucet in her kitchen, and once brought over some groceries when I noticed she seemed too stressed to shop. She said she was getting part-time work at a daycare, and things were starting to get better. 6 months later, I was looking at my own budget. Money had gotten tighter for me because of some car trouble and medical bills. I realized I could use that $1,050 back, not all at once, just something. So I texted her one evening and asked if she'd be able to start paying back even a little, maybe $50 or $100 a month. I phrased it carefully. I even said if things were still hard, I understood, but I'd appreciate any effort.
She didn't respond.
A few days later, I saw her out front and asked if she got my message. That's when she said it, not angry, not even emotional. Just flat. "You gave it. You don't get to ask." I was stunned. I said, "Sarah, that wasn't a gift. I was trying to help." "You said you'd pay me back." She shrugged. I don't remember saying that. It took me a second to realize she meant it. She really thought, or was pretending, that the money was a gift and she didn't owe me anything. I tried to stay calm. I said, "I didn't make you sign anything, but you said," and she cut me off. "If you're gonna start bothering me over this, we've got a problem." I backed off. I didn't want to fight. I figured maybe I'd try again later when things cooled down. A week later, I got a call from the property manager. Apparently, Sarah had filed a report with the HOA saying I was harassing her about money, showing up at her house uninvited, and making her feel unsafe. That hit me like a brick. I had asked her in a text. One time. The second time was in person, when she was outside already. I explained everything to the property manager, and thankfully he knew me and believed my side. But still, the damage was done. People started giving me weird looks. One neighbor even stopped waving back. So, I decided to file a small claims case. I pulled up the bank transfer records, found our text history where she said, "Thank you so much, I'll pay you back as soon as I can," and gathered anything I could that showed it wasn't a gift. She tried to argue in court that I'd insisted it was a gift, that she'd never agreed to repay me, and that my asking her was emotional pressure. The day of the hearing came, and I was more nervous than I expected. I'd never been in a courtroom before, not even for jury duty. It wasn't a big place, just a local courthouse, nothing fancy, but the whole thing felt heavy. Like I wasn't just trying to get my money back. I was trying to prove I wasn't some creep bothering a single mom. Sarah showed up 10 minutes late. She looked put together. Professional clothes, her hair neatly done. I almost didn't recognize her. She walked in with this calm, confident air, like she had nothing to worry about. The judge was a middle-aged guy, serious but not unfriendly. He asked me to explain what happened. I kept it simple. I told him I lent Sarah the money for rent, not as a gift, and that she'd thanked me and said she would repay me when she could. I mentioned I only asked about repayment twice, once in a text, once in person. I handed over printed copies of the texts and the bank transfer. Then it was Sarah's turn. She told the court that I'd offered the money out of kindness, that I never asked for repayment until months later, and when I did, it made her feel unsafe. She said I'd shown up outside her house and cornered her, which was a complete lie. I never even stepped onto her property. She also said I had a pattern of watching her house. That part made me freeze. She said she had seen me lingering outside, that I was creeping around her driveway. She made it sound like I was some kind of stalker. My stomach dropped. I looked at the judge and said, "That's not true. I live right next door. Of course, she's going to see me outside." She shrugged and said, "It's the way he looks at me." It made me uncomfortable. I felt like I couldn't breathe. It was like she was trying to ruin me, not just avoid paying the money. She was painting me as this quiet threat, this guy who couldn't take no for an answer. The judge asked if she had any evidence of harassment, texts, calls, recordings. She said no, but that her word should count. I thought I was losing the case right then. But then the judge looked through the printed messages. There was one where she'd said, "Thank you so much for covering this. I'll figure out a way to repay you. I swear." She tried to say it was just a polite thing to say, not a promise. But the judge didn't buy it. He ruled in my favor. She was ordered to repay the $1,050 in monthly installments of $150. But that wasn't the end. A week later, I found a letter in my mailbox from a lawyer. Sarah was filing a restraining order. Not because of anything new. She was using the same "he makes me feel unsafe" argument. It didn't matter that I'd won the case. I called a lawyer of my own. That's when I found out something that changed everything. My lawyer had requested some background information on Sarah in case we had to go to court again. Turns out, this wasn't her first time. 2 years before moving to our neighborhood, she'd lived in a different apartment complex in Broken Arrow. She had a history there, a similar pattern. A neighbor had helped her during a breakup. She took money, and when he tried to get it back, she filed a complaint against him. She'd even posted about it online, not by name, but in a private Facebook group. "If they're dumb enough to hand it over, they're dumb enough to eat the loss," she'd written. My lawyer showed me screenshots. She'd done this before. That's when I realized this wasn't just someone going through a rough time. This was someone who knew exactly what she was doing. And I wasn't her first target. More happened after that, things I still have trouble believing. My lawyer told me to stay quiet about what we found, at least until the restraining order hearing. But the screenshots ate away at me. I couldn't stop thinking about how easily she lied, how she almost ruined me just to dodge a debt. I kept my distance. I didn't look in her direction, didn't speak her name. But that didn't stop her. A few nights later, around 11 p.m., I heard pounding on my front door. Not a knock, full-on pounding. I grabbed my phone, flipped on the porch light, and opened the door with the chain still on. It was 2 police officers. They said someone reported I was banging on windows and screaming threats. They asked if I'd been outside in the last hour. I told them no. I even showed them the Nest camera footage from my doorbell, clear video showing nothing but silence and stillness for the last few hours. One of the officers stepped aside to talk into his radio. The other stayed, shifting uncomfortably. "She's saying you've been escalating. Showing up at her windows. Screaming about your money." I said, "I haven't said a word to her since the court hearing." They left after reviewing the footage, but they left with this warning. If there's another call and there's no clear evidence, it could still get messy. She was setting me up. I called my lawyer the next morning and told him everything. That's when he decided to subpoena her old tenant file from the Broken Arrow complex. He found someone from her previous building, a man named Kevin, who said she'd pulled the same thing on him. He paid her gas bill and helped her with groceries for 2 months after her divorce. When he asked for the money back, she accused him of stalking her. She'd reported him to the building management and even filed a report with the police. He never got his money back, and eventually he had to move out because people started avoiding him. He agreed to submit a written statement if we needed it. Then something strange happened. I got a call from my property manager, the same one who'd first warned me about her harassment complaint. He said, You didn't hear this from me officially, but Sarah's late on her rent. Again. Apparently, she'd been struggling to keep up for months, even with the court repayment order. She'd paid me once $150 and nothing since. But what hit me hardest was what came next. The property manager said someone else in the building, a guy from the third floor, had been helping her with groceries and errands recently. Said she'd been through a lot. That's when it clicked.
She was doing it again.
Right under everyone's nose. I thought about warning him. I really did. But I didn't know how without sounding crazy or like I had some kind of vendetta. All I had were screenshots and warnings, and she was careful. Too careful. 2 weeks later, I saw him helping her unload a trunk full of groceries. She smiled and touched his arm in that fake soft way she does when she wants something. He had no idea what he was walking into. And that's when I decided I wasn't done with this. Not yet. I still see her sometimes, walking her kids to the mailbox like nothing ever happened. The guy from the third floor doesn't wave at me anymore. I think maybe she got to him too. And the money? I don't expect to see another dime. But that's not what stays with me. What stays with me is that I looked someone in the eye, offered help without asking for anything back right away, and they turned that into a weapon. I keep wondering how many other people she's done this to, or who she'll do it to next. And the worst part is, even with everything I know now, a small part of me still wishes I hadn't opened the door that night.